Hello, White Sox fans, and welcome back to another edition of the Sox On Tap podcast. It's Tony Marchese alongside NWI Steve. Steve, it's home sweep home this time. We were talking about some heartbreak happening at home last episode on Sunday evening. Different tune today. How you doing, my friend?
Hey yo, Anthony, I'm doing very well. It's funny the whirlwind of emotions that can just happen in a short couple 2-3 day span. Because Sunday when we hopped on the mic, it was basically it's over, and now all of a sudden we're saying we're so back. What changed? It's like that meme.
It is like that meme. It is like that meme, and I'll tell you something, Steve. You know what changed? We started winning baseball games. And that's important. I like winning baseball games. I don't know about you, but
My philosophy on it is this: the 21st century, or excuse me, the 20th century philosophizer Nuke Lelouch famously once said, "I like winning. It's like better than losing."
fair enough. That's some wisdom. I didn't know that we were going to get some philosophy class going here so early on a Thursday evening, but here we are, Steve. Here we are. It does feel like we're back a little bit. Nothing really, as a White Sox fan, nothing really feels better than like a home series sweep. I don't know. Middle of the season, April, you can't get much better than that.
And if I'm not mistaken, didn't they finish the month of April 500?
They did, in fact, finish the month of April 500. And we got an article up on that over at On Tap Sportsnet. You can go check that out. Had to give some credit to our guy, Bez Beyond the Pen, for that. He was quick to point that out on the X timeline yesterday after the victory. It looks like we've got
Oh God.
we've got our guy Voodoo here as well. Steve's guy still has the worst bullpen in the history of balls with laces. We'll talk maybe about Brian Bannister today, but we do have quite a few topics to get here today, Steve. We're going to talk about this sweep, and then we've got some hot topics in White Sox land that have dominated most of the chatter online. And Steven's not online, so we'll see what he has to say about those topics because he can't voice his opinions on such things. But first, we're going to start with this sweep. It was a rain-delayed Monday night, Steven. We were playing, will this game even happen all night? I'm surprised that it was not a Reinsdorf situation where everybody was sent packing. It was dog night at the ballpark, though, Steve. I'm wondering if they didn't want to have to, reschedule a game and bring dogs back. I'm wondering if the logistics there, this is just maybe my tinfoil hat theory on this, but kudos to anybody who brought a dog to the ballpark and waited it out for like 3 hours before a full baseball game took place. That's a little interesting. I'm not sure my dog would handle that, although Hosa he is a gentleman and a scholar, as you know, Stephen.
He is big Hosa guy.
I don't know if he would have handled that one so well, but this game was some offensive sparks were flying for the White Sox. Another 8 runs up on the board, although they probably could have done a little bit better with the pitching and defense, if I do say so myself in this one, Stephen. And then, of course, the big news in this one, Murakami hits a home run, another one.
Thing.
And now, at least at that time, I'm not sure what happened today, but 12th homer of the season, leads the league. That's some good shit, Steve. I don't know what you think about that.
I am a big fan. It's long been documented that I very much enjoy when the White Sox hit the ball over that fencing that they set up prior to the game. I like when they do it a lot. Everyone knows I love it when they deploy the multi-home run strategy. I am a big fan. I would like the White Sox to deploy it more frequently. And I also love the multi-run home run strategy. I think it's great. And but kind of circling back on one of your tinfoil hat theories about was this game played because of Dog Day? I mentioned this in the group text. I still maintain that the reason why this was played and not done as a doubleheader was because of $5 Tuesday the next day, and Jerry didn't want to have to give away all that concession profits by having 2 games. So that's my theory.
We're going to have to go back and look and see if they've had Tuesday, $5 Tuesday doubleheaders and how they work that. I wouldn't be shocked if they have had one straight doubleheader on a Tuesday and the $5 Tuesday pricing is not in effect for the first game, which is kind of
that would be very, that's something I would definitely expect from Satan.
I would expect that as well. But Monday night, man, this was a late night. I think this game finished up a little bit after midnight Central Time. Steve, you were not awake for it though. I don't think
that's hashtag unconfirmed.
I don't know. We were still firing. BZ and I were still firing text messages back and forth. It was a great comeback victory. Sox put up a 7 spot in that 7th, including the Munetaka Murakami home run. Very exciting ball game, and they're able to close it down despite 2 runs being scored by the Angels in the 9th inning. Nothing can ever be easy, Steven, especially with this bullpen. And we'll get back to Voodoo's comments on that one. Do you see anything changing with this, Steve?
No, I mean, bullpens are extremely volatile from year to year. And I mean, even over the course of a season, I mean, guys can start slow and then turn it around. I mean, they're going to be shuffling guys kind of in and out of the bullpen throughout the course of this season here. The Matt Berkland, Jordan Leisure experience. I don't know how much longer this is going to go for because it's not going well. When I was at the game Tuesday night, I had a buddy of mine. He was actually in a suite. And as soon as Leisure comes in, he sends me a text from a brother, and he's like, "Hold on to your butts." And right on cue, Leisure gives up a fucking bomb right away. And it's just like, you can't make this shit up. It's not getting better anytime soon from him. Your pal Anthony Dominguez is an adventure. That's a big part of the reason why I was not an advocate of that signing over the course of the offseason to begin with. Brian Hudson's actually throwing the ball pretty. He's been okay lately. That's been fine. Grant Taylor obviously has shown some good spurts here early on in the season. So it's been a mixed bag, but it's kind of one of those things where when it's bad, it's really bad. And that's problematic.
It is a bit problematic, but hey, sweeps are sweeps. I don't want to dwell on bad bullpen play as much as I want to talk about wins here, Steve. We have plenty of time and have had plenty of time on this show to discuss bad things, and we'll have more That's So White Sox stuff to discuss in a little bit. Game 2 of this series, Stephen, it was the Drew Romo game. The first time in White Sox history that a player has gone yard, well, a catcher has gone yard from both sides of the plate in one night. Stephen, give me some thoughts from Tuesday. You were at the ballpark, and you got to witness some more White Sox history.
Yeah. So I got to see that. Also got to see Colson Montgomery, hit a dinger, and it was funny. My strategy in the group text worked because after that first inning, Jose Soriano looked just absolutely filthy, and I sent the text that we're on no-hitter watch tonight, and then Colson right on cue. So it worked. It's only crazy if it doesn't work.
This is true. Now, normally it's our guy BZ that
is the one. Do you think it'll hold?
Do you think it'll hold? He likes to talk about no hitters on the timeline. I was not actively watching my X as much as I normally do at the time during this game, but I did see your text message, and I apologize to Bez if he didn't put this out here. I'd have to go back through his timeline, but if he didn't, are you now the protector of White Sox no hitters, Stephen? Are you taking this throne from our guy BZ?
Well, listen, as somebody that has been to 4 no hitters and a perfect game throughout the course of my life, I don't know if our listeners are aware of that. I don't know that. I mean, it's not something that I just regularly just throw out there for public consumption.
I've never heard this before, to be honest with you.
If I'm being honest, if someone should be the protector of no hitters, it probably should be me, if we're being honest with ourselves.
All right, we'll leave it up for discussion at some point in our in our chats here, Stephen, internally. Nightmare says you've never mentioned that before. I mean, this is news for the listeners, news for me.
Breaking news.
Breaking news. Stephen has seen quite a few no-hitters in his day. This turns out to be a 5-2 victory, Stephen. It was a good baseball
There
game.
was a
Good
lot of
baseball
fun
game
at the
to watch.
ballpark that night. A lot of fun at the ballpark.
I'm glad you said that. It's becoming a little bit more fun to go to the ballpark with these wins that the Sox are stacking up. We'll look at this one from the pitching standpoint, Stephen, here. I want your thoughts on what you saw out of Davis Martin. And I want to identify with you whether or not you think that this team is also deploying sort of the bullpen A squad, bullpen B squad strategy again that we've seen sort of in the past, because I found it interesting that after Davis Martin, he followed with Sean Newcomb, Jordan Leisure, which obviously we've got some thoughts on that. And then Sir Anthony or Tony Dominguez, whatever you want to dub him via the day. But it seemed like they went with who they've identified as their high leverage guys thus far, even though maybe those guys may not be performing to the best of their abilities. Stephen, give me some thoughts on how the White Sox lined up their pitching in this victory.
All right. Well, first, I want to talk about Davis Martin. Through the first 6 starts of his season here, he's really been solid. I mean, and solid's probably a little bit of an understatement here. One of the things that I've really liked about him is his command of the strike zone has improved significantly here this season. I'm looking on a Savant page right now, and he's the 88th percentile when it comes to walk percentage. He's at 5.6 on his walk rate. A drastic, maybe not a drastic improvement, but a significant enough improvement this year over where he was a year ago. So that's one thing that to me is very significant. And we've also seen the strikeouts uptick as well. I mean, right now he's at a 22.9% strikeout rate
that night.
Right. He is. So, I mean, his strikeout rate's up 5.5% over where it was a year ago. And then that walk rate is down 2.4%. So, people know that one of the things I talk about a lot is command of the strike zone, and that in particular, that strikeout to walk rate. That's one of the things that has really improved with Davis Martin this year. And that's one of the things that I've been critical about up and down the organization over the course of the last couple of years, because it has been very problematic. So maybe he is a guy that has kind of turned a corner. Maybe the Bannister effect is maybe starting to work with him a little bit. Maybe we'll see.
Big news if true.
But the moral of the story here is that he's been really solid to start the year, and he has far exceeded my expectations of what I thought he was going to be. Now, will he continue that throughout the course of the season? Remains to be seen. But so far, the early returns have been outstanding. To your point, though, and to your question about the deployment of the bullpen and the quote-unquote bullpen A squad versus bullpen B squad, I don't think that that's a White Sox only kind of strategy. Most teams, are going to have their guys that they're going to go to in high leverage situations when they have leads. So I think it's a good thing that Will Venable has identified the guys that when they have leads in close late game situations that he trusts more than others. That's a positive thing from my perspective here. So going about it that way, deploying guys in those high leverage situations that he trusts, like Sean Newcomb, for example, that you talked about, Grant Taylor, I think that's a good thing.
I do as well. The question that I have, obviously, with this one is Jordan Leisure. Now, obviously, there is some history there. I would say that if you didn't have an injury, a season-ending injury to Mike Vassell, I could see where Mike Vassell is probably the guy that's deployed in that situation. We got another comment in here from
The one
Nightmare
thing
that said that Taylor should be the closer or the eighth inning guy. I think that there's some interesting stuff that they've done with Grant Taylor thus far, and they don't typically rely on him in the middle of that pack all the time. And they want to give Jordan Leisure more of a leash than I think most White Sox fans are comfortable with. But I agree with your assessment here that it's a good thing that he's identified who he trusts in these things.
The one thing that I'll also say about the usage of Leisure in that spot, it was 5-1 in the ninth inning when you put him in. So I personally wouldn't really categorize that as a high leverage situation personally when you're up 4 runs with 3 outs to get. Now, granted, we've been at, or at least I've been at games where they have coughed those up and coughed up leads even more significant than that.
Am I a bad fan at this point when I consider 4 runs to be high leverage? It shouldn't be. It's not a safe situation, but for the White Sox, it shouldn't be.
Right. It shouldn't be. I'm talking more so, I guess, in the context of like baseball as a whole. I don't think that would really be categorized as a 7 or excuse me, as a high leverage, situation right there. With that being said, I mean, like, I don't trust Jordan Leisure. I don't. And we've talked about this a lot in the group text. If Jordan Leisure went away, I'd be okay with it. Like I've seen enough at this point. He'll have a couple 2-3 weeks, where he'll throw the ball well. He'll give you that false hope, and then he'll revert back. So if they made a decision to move on from him and do something else, I'd be fine with it.
Fair enough. I'm pretty much right there with you. I think we've had this conversation a couple of times on the show, on the phone, in the ballpark, over and over again. Not sure if Jordan Leisure is ever going to turn it around. That trade is looking more and more nightmarish as it goes on.
No, it's not. It's really looking like a suck fest for both teams. Although I'm old enough to remember when that was a heist for the White Sox when they got him and one of them.
I'm talking more or less on our return, but
well, like I said, I mean, I remember when it was Leisure and Nick
nasty Nick Nastrini,
Nick Nastrini, Rigatoni, hey, look, another Italian that failed here. What a shocker.
Oh boy, we can't make it through one show without a comment.
Facts only, Anthony.
Make it through one show.
I am a facts only kind of guy.
Can't make it through one show without a comment. We've got more here to discuss, Stephen, in this series. Now, I will say that if we wanna like talk about Italians saving the day, we've got to talk about Game 3 of this series and Sam Antonacci hitting that triple in the ninth inning to tie the ball game. So I think that we've got to dial back the anti-Italianness going on here. Nightmare's going to wind up in the black zone with that kind of racism in the comments.
Wow.
I'm sure you appreciated the triple, did you not, Stephen?
I enjoy extra base hits. Yes.
You enjoy extra base hits. There you go.
Yeah.
See, there we go. And you enjoy pizza and lasagna, is from what I've heard, according to multiple sources.
Hashtag unconfirmed.
Well, we'll see how that progresses as the season goes along, Stephen. This was a slow baseball game for the White Sox. Didn't really jump out of the gate with as much offensive firepower as we've seen in some of these games, but they did get the job done. And the Colson Montgomery walk-off, his first of his career, I think that's a positive sign coming from him in a very clutch spot. The Sox have been, in my opinion, downright horrible in the 10th inning since the ghost runner has been implemented. It just feels like, especially at home, Steve, they tend to just give up runs, multiple runs normally. And then,
sometimes you have a manager that puts a closer out there to run the bases. And
yeah, there's weird shit that happens. Right. But getting a walk-off in a series sweep, and it coming from your young shortstop who's been pretty good at the plate so far to start this season after a good second half last year. The vibes are at an all-time high there, right? Like you have to enjoy that as a White Sox fan. Seeing
Oh,
them win a close one-run ball game in extra innings to complete a sweep at home and a homestand. I can't ask for more. I don't know about you.
yeah, no, it was great. I mean, and all I will say is Miguel Vargas could never. I know there's a fat slob that goes around on the internet trying to talk about how great he is. I mean, he could never come through in a situation like that. But anyways, it was great to see Colson come through in that spot right there, deliver the walk off, get that sweep. Just really nice way. You go 4-2 on the homestand. You've won 8 out of 12 right now. So things have definitely improved. The mood and the vibes, generally speaking, have really picked up here in the last 2 weeks. Um, Again, I think that's a byproduct of just actually hitting the baseball, hitting it over that fencing, and scoring more runs. We've talked about this for a number of years. When you're a baseball team and you're not scoring runs with consistency, you just look dead and lifeless out there. You know, so even if you have a talent deficit, if you at least have competitive at bats and can be a marginal offense, it looks so much better than if you are a team that just struggles to score runs with consistency. And the fact that the offense has picked up the slack here and picked up the pace in the last 2 weeks has made it a much more palatable brand of baseball.
It has. And you know what? The hitting with runners in scoring position really hasn't totally improved. But as you said, when you're able to hit the ball over the fence a couple of times in a game, you're able to come up with a clutch hit um, late in ball games. That could be the difference maker. I mean, they were 3 for 11 with runners in scoring position in that series finale. Left 11 guys on base. There were opportunities for them to bust this one open a couple of times throughout this ball game. Weren't able to do so, but at the end of the day, like we like to say here, wins and putting one in the win column, that's what matters at the end of the day.
That left column, that's what it's all about.
That's what matters at the end of the day, and they were able to do so. Eric Fetty, man, I want to talk a little bit about Eric Fetty. He goes 7 innings in this one, strikes out 6. He's got a 3.24 ERA. Didn't walk anybody, and I know that you love that. You love when there's no walks from your starting pitcher, and again, 7 innings out of a starter, Steve. Yeah, you got to be feeling really good about the starting pitching after seeing what Martin and Fetty went back to back with. Pretty solid starts there.
I mean, you have Eric Fetty out there giving me 21 outs and no walks. I mean, it's like I'm getting a funny feeling in my plums. I mean that's what I want to see. That's what I want from my starting pitcher right there. And as the Hawkaroo famously would say, the best way to protect your bullpen is with your starters. So, you think about the performance from Sean Burke the last time he took the ball. I think that was on Sunday. Even though there was an opener used, and so he came in, in the second inning, but he covered, was it 7 1/3, and so you do that. Davis Martin throws the ball well. Fetty goes out there and throws the ball well. If you get consistent length out of your starting pitching, that is one of the ways that you can go about hiding and masking an inconsistent and unreliable bullpen.
That's true. That's very true. Our guy Dominguez comes in that 10th inning. I thought it was his cleanest appearance yet.
So would you go as far as to say he earned the Sir title that day?
For this one, yes. Just because I've been horrified by what I've seen in these 10th innings for so long. And I thought, I got to give credit where credit's due. thought it was good to bring him out there in the 10th. I know he's pitched a little bit. It's back-to-back days there for him, I believe, and works a clean inning. So,
well, to quote
that paycheck.
To quote Steven Stone, when it comes to closers, they're more likely to wear away than rust away, or they're more likely to rust away than wear away.
It's a tough job out there. Somebody's got to do it. But hey, gets one strikeout there, no walks. The Sox didn't walk anybody in that game, and
Yes.
that's a good thing to see from your pitching staff.
I approve.
Limiting walks was definitely a factor in this sweep, and yeah, we've seen the other side of that as well. So, hey, everything came up White Sox in this series, and it's nice to get on these airwaves and talk about winning baseball. It just feels like we don't get to do that enough. Steven, any final thoughts from this 3-game set that you have before we move on to some of these other hot topics in White Sox baseball?
I did find it comical in a sense, just the reaction that former White Sox Yoan Moncada got every time he stepped into the batter's box over the course of the last 3 days.
Your guy Matthew Crawford was not happy with the reaction that Yoan Moncada was receiving when he stepped up to the plate. Do you have anything to say to your boy Matthew if he tunes in?
Listen, to the show? Everyone knows I'm a Matt Crawford guy. Always have been, always will be. I famously defended him against some just egregious allegations in the court of law and the court of public opinion. So I will long be a Matt Crawford advocate. On this one, I'm going to recuse myself.
Wow. Is this attorney-client privilege type
of course
stuff that you've got going on here? I understand. Yeah. I understand. I probably shouldn't have even broached that subject, but sometimes you have to ask the hard-hitting questions on this show to make sure that everybody who's listening gets the most out of it. Steven, we're going to move on to some hot topics in White Sox baseball, and it is an off day for the Chicago White Sox here on this Thursday, April the 30th. And off days, as you know from your time online, typically bring up some very interesting
topics. Or bad topics and takes.
Bad topics and takes. That there's all sorts of stuff that transpires on the off days. I'm going to start with one that has sort of been brewing here for a little bit. And this one wasn't exactly an off-day topic, but it still permeated itself around the community. And that is what we're hearing about the White Sox and their number 1 overall draft pick. And, Steven, it's quite interesting to hear that the Sox haven't fully committed to drafting the number 1 overall ranked prospect coming into this draft in Rock Chalowski. Steven, have you followed this saga?
Have I fully followed it? No, because as you mentioned, I am not #online, but getting kind of the Cliff Notes version from you and everything. And I went back and I listened to Boob's appearance on The Score, which, look, Mully should not be allowed to talk baseball. Like, there really needs to be a mandate in place because it's just, he just makes everything worse. But, Boob coming on there and saying that they're not sold on him. Look, at the end of the day, it's pretty clear who the best player is in college baseball right now. It's you watch Rock Chalowski, even if you just look at the numbers, it tells you what you need to know. And one of the things that Boob was saying was that Chalowski's not sold on the White Sox, or he's not particularly keen on them, and trying to basically say that he's going to basically say, no, I'm not going to come if you draft me. That's not how this shit works.
So It's kind of interesting that this has gone through. We've gone through this before. Maybe not you and I because we don't root for a specific football team. But this is very reminiscent to me of the reports that came out that Caleb Williams was gonna, try and avoid being drafted by the Chicago Bears. And as we sit here today, it seems pretty fair to say that Caleb Williams has embraced the city of Chicago,
Mhm.
and has, for all the reports and everything that was out there, it just totally didn't come to fruition. I'm going to read the little passage from Nightingale's Sunday column. The Chicago White Sox remain uncertain who they will draft with the number 1 pick in July and insist they have not committed to taking UCLA shortstop Rock Chalowski, the consensus top player in the draft. It's also unclear, several executives say, whether the White Sox are Chalowski's top preference. This just screams the same media storylines that you saw around Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears heading into that draft. And you kind of
Wasn't
have
the same thing talked about with Bedard and the Hawks, given where they are?
There
Kind of.
was some with the Hawks. I don't think it was as prevalent. I know that there were, I don't want to say national media pundits, uh, you know, pointing this out. I think it was a little more fan driven and came out of Vancouver, just because I believe the Canucks really wanted to get Connor Bedard over there in his hometown. I can see where that would spur up, but every time this city gets a number 1 draft pick, there is somewhat of a storyline behind why no one would want to come here. And the franchises that we're talking about in question have number 1 overall picks for a reason. They haven't played well. So you can kind of see why that is, but in sports, having that number 1 overall draft pick is supposed to help you improve and get the best player. So I don't know. This one, I don't really buy it as much, but I have seen people raise the alarm bells saying that if it is coming from one Bob Nightingale, who also threw out the Tony La Russa stuff, as we all know well, that he was kind of ahead of everyone else with that. What is the reason why he would say something of the sort here?
Um, I, to me, this just screams of a scenario where you have a guy that is, like we talked about, the consensus overall number 1 pick. And, a lot of times in that scenario, a lot of organizations don't like to tip their hand. You know, I feel like we kind of went through this, like I said, with the aforementioned Connor Bedard scenario. And I remember at the time when people were like, well, maybe the Blackhawks aren't going to take Connor Bedard. You know, I just think that that's a thing that happens more commonly when you have someone that is head and shoulders above the rest of the class that they're entering in from a draft perspective. So to me, that's kind of what this seems like. And look, at the end of the day, the thing that Bob mentioned is like, oh, well, maybe they'll draft the catcher out of Georgia Tech and try to save some bonus pool money, like, to try to further along the rebuild and everything. Like, look, at the end of the day, you draft the best fucking player. Like, you got the number 1 pick. Don't do this dumb nickel and dime bullshit, trying to spread it around, because, the White Sox history when it comes to drafting players in the second round and further on down the draft is not particularly good. So if you have a guy that a lot of scouts have said and comped to Troy Tulowitzki, if you can get that guy, you fucking get that guy. Period.
Yeah, Bruce Levine joined the show a day later and said, quote, they're going to choose who they feel is the best player, whether he's reticent or not. I don't think that's going to have anything to do with it. If the White Sox think Chalowski is the best player, they're going to choose him. I don't typically always love sharing Bruce's thoughts, but I thought that summed it up pretty well. It definitely gained a lot of media attention, though,
Yeah.
and
And
for a topic like this to be just permeating around, you kind of have to question why.
yeah,
And I think you and I have kind of discussed the why here, and it's a talking point at this
yeah.
point, and I don't think we're done with it. I think it's going to continue to have its cycles, and we'll probably have another off day, probably closer to the draft, where we're talking about this again for whatever reason.
And one of the things that Boob talked about when he was on the score was like, oh well, Chalowski could tell them, well, if you draft me, I'm not coming. The fuck's he gonna do then? And he suggests like, oh, maybe he'll go play in Japan. So he's gonna go play in Japan. Like, give me a fucking break with this.
There's no chance that the number one overall prospect who's going to get millions of dollars to play here is going to jettison himself to Japan just to avoid playing Major
And
League Baseball.
especially knowing that this is the last draft of this collective bargaining cycle. Who knows what is going to happen with the draft going forward here? Are they going to change? Are they going to input more caps on signing bonuses? Like, this is the last chance for this. Who knows what that structure is going to look like? And so, okay, so you don't want to come to the White Sox. Okay, then guess what? Like, so next year, you go back in and like you get drafted by Colorado. Is that really a better situation?
Or the Mets.
Lol, Mets.
Had to throw that one out there.
But
we'll see what happens.
I mean, it's just this whole thing is stupid. Like, oh well, he's going to tell him he's not going to come. Like, give me a fucking break with this. Like again, I just you're the number one overall pick in the draft, and you're not going to sign with him, and you're going to go play in Japan, or you're going to go back to UCLA for your senior year. Like, give me a fucking break with this.
We'll see what happens, but I'm going to have to press X to doubt these reports here. We'll see. We'll see. I don't have much more on this one, Steve. We've got another hot topic, and this one started rearing its head over the past, I would say, week or so. Now, I've seen some people on X earlier this week over in Japan, in Munetaka's home country, start suggesting that they don't want to purchase tickets or merchandise, White Sox merchandise, because they firmly believe the White Sox are going to trade Mune at the deadline. And so whatever reputation that the White Sox have over there, probably not the greatest. And with all due respect to that, I can see why. It's been a trial.
They've earned it.
They've earned it. Yes, they have. Fair is fair. They've earned it. We've said our piece on this show about where things have gone with this franchise. I found it kind of puzzling, and I'm firmly myself in the extend Munetaka Murakami camp. I've posted that. I've said it on the show. I think that they should just get a long-term deal with him done right now, even if that's 4 or 5 years.
Have you created an extend Mune hashtag yet on the
These are out there. These are out there.
Okay.
We'll utilize them.
Okay.
But there was a post today from our Chuck as part of his podcast, and the topic came up as he was talking to someone who voiced the concerns out of Japan that the Sox were going to potentially trade Murakami at some point. And I'll find who he was speaking with here in just a second. It was at Yaka Kosumo. And Chuck said in response to this that there's no chance not happening. I would be shocked. Now, to me, there's that part of White Sox fandom where we've seen the, us waiting for the rest of the division to show up, NBC Sports Chicago tweet. And that wound up being a giant, baseball images that preceded unfortunate events, a meme. It became a meme. It kind of felt like it had some of that energy. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking, yes, Chuck's right. There's no chance that they would trade this guy. And then Jeff Passan goes and writes this blurb. Speaking of stars, Murakami was an unquestionable one in Japan, where he holds the single-season home run record for a Japan-born player. MLB teams worried about his propensity to swing and miss, and the free agent market over the winter cratered. The 2-year, $34 million deal from Chicago was a stroke of brilliance, as Murakami's 12 home runs lead the MLB. And at some point in the next 15 months, he could be the most valuable position player trade chip in years. Now, Chuck had said that on the show that he hadn't seen anybody talking about the Chicago White Sox potentially trading Murakami, at least at this deadline. Next year, lockout forbidden, and, contract extension talks, as sort of the baseline for this. Could they go south? We don't know. But for all intents and purposes right now, Steven, it seems like he's adapted to the Chicago White Sox and the city of Chicago pretty well. Universally loved here. Now, I was doing some Googling and searching around for the headlines that Murakami had today. It's an off day, slow day. Want my White Sox news, right? I'm searching around. You go look, and all of a sudden, you get another report that came out of the Sporting News. Now, this was a part of their Mets section. I guess someone over at Bleacher Report had written an article about Murakami being a potential trade piece at this year's deadline and had suggested in an article that the New York Mets should target him. Now, Bleacher Report's a pretty big outlet in sports. Now, do they fully understand what's going on here in Chicago with Murakami? Are they reading the same things that, people in Japan? A lot of people dub this as out of town stupid, right? We've dealt with this in Chicago sports before, but there's a full article out there. I kind of quoted it and threw it up on my X account today about how the Mets may target Murakami at the trade deadline. And I just don't think that that's going to happen. Now, the Mets and the Sox have a history of working together. You get Chuck's reports on this. All of a sudden, we're thrown into this whole world where we've got to talk about the potential of Murakami being traded. And here's some quotes from this. Amazingly, Murakami is tied with Aaron Judge for the MLB lead in home runs with 12, playing steady defense at first base. Quote, little good has it done the Chicago White Sox, though, who still have one of the worst run differentials and little to no realistic hope of making the postseason, Bleacher Report's Kerry Miller wrote on Thursday. Miller notes that the White Sox could take advantage of Murakami's hot start at the deadline. Among the interesting clubs could be the New York Mets. New York's cycling door of Jorge Polanco, Brett Beatty, Mark Vientos, and Jared Young at first base is not ideal. Quote, meanwhile, arguably the most painful of all offseason decisions that look now regrettable was the Mets letting Pete Alonso sign with the Baltimore Orioles and then inadequately dealing with his departure. Murakami is under contract for 2027 too, so the Mets would have him in the lineup for at least 1.5 seasons. Losing Alonso hurt, but this would be a better way to approach the corner infield position than throwing guys who have never played at the spot before there. The loser in this deal would be Chicago White Sox fans who've fallen in love with Murakami's personality and his play on the field. This then spurred up a collection of other articles from outlets such as Heavy.
My brain hurts already.
A few other places. So, Steve, I'm just saying, this is out there. It's all over the internet. For the fan who's not tuned in to, just ingrained in White Sox Twitter, White Sox podcasts, the local hometown fan who's really tuned in, when you see all these national outlets throwing out this news that Murakami could be traded, it's really hard to combat that. And it's going to take a news cycle spin of its own. We've seen stories run all, just completely run wild in the media. There's one about JP Morgan Chase running wild in the media today. I'm sure you've seen that. But
no, I missed that one.
digress.
We'll have to talk offline about that.
Okay, we'll talk offline about that one. But there are so many of these stories that just take flight in the media nationally that are crazy. I think this one's one of them. I want them to extend Murakami and put this to bed. Now, Chris Getz did not help when he met with the media earlier at the start of this homestand and was directly asked the question, is there any plans to extend him right now? And the answer was plainly no. He's under contract right now. We'll deal with that when we get to it. Paraphrasing here. But I think he probably could have gotten ahead of this if he said, we believe Murakami is going to be here for a long time. Now, I understand he didn't want to show cards and put that out there right away. That's only going to hurt them in negotiations. But you're dealing with someone who has the potential to be a long-term star here, someone that has injected a ton of life into this White Sox offense. I'm firmly in the hashtag extend Murakami camp, and I will make that clear as we go throughout the season. But the fact that we're dealing with this a month and a week into the baseball season, that this guy could potentially be traded at the August deadline, it makes me sick, Steven. Makes me sick. I want to hear what you have to say about all of this.
Okay, well, my first thought is this. When people that are fans of the Mets are writing about, he's not doing anything for the White Sox, so the Mets are targeting him. So listen, if we want to make up pointless bullshit, I'm gonna throw something out there right now. I think that I think that East St. Louis should target a certain football team that is looking for a new stadium, because I know there's a lot of land available in East St. Louis. It's a good spot. It makes sense. So we should just run with this. East St. Louis is in the market to get a football team. That's what we're doing here, basically, with this whole thing, like with the Mets. Like, you can target somebody all you want. Doesn't mean it's going to happen. Okay? The greater point is this, though. Munetaka Murakami is 26 years old. He is showing the elite level power that scouts talked about. What has this team needed for much of the last decade? Left-handed power. He's provided that. He is in his prime. As you talked about, this is a guy that is apparently very well liked in the clubhouse, has a lot of personality, something that there hasn't been a Sox player that had personality that delivered with consistency on the field in a really long time. Even you go back to the early 2000s when they were winning and when they were playing well, and the 05 team when they won the World Series, like Paul Konerko didn't have much personality. Jermaine Dye didn't have a lot of personality. Okay. They just went out there and they did their fucking jobs. Like Jose Abreu, when he was here, didn't have a ton of personality. Okay. Mooney has that personality. This is something that can help grow this fan base. And we talked about this over the course of the winter when the acquisition was made. Obviously, this is an attempt to grow their presence in the Pacific Rim, because we're seeing more players come out of Japan. We're seeing more players come out of Korea. And this is an opportunity for the organization to start to make a little bit of headway in that market where they have not had in a very long time. It would be a horrendous look to every Japanese player that is thinking about coming over to the States eventually to play if the White Sox took this guy and traded him at some point during the course of this 2-year deal. The thought is, if he continues to display the power at this level, this is someone you absolutely have to be talking about extending. So, Uncle Justin, I know you're listening, because why wouldn't you be? You're very tuned in, and you're probably going to watch Rock Chalowski play up at your brother's field up at Michigan State this weekend here. So I'm sure you're probably going to have a talk with him, and we're going to get this whole thing sorted out on the draft front. But while you're listening to this, whatever it is you have to do to get Satan to allow you to spend your money so that we can extend this guy that is injecting life into what has been a lifeless franchise. What was something we talked about a year ago when Dick Allen got inducted into the Hall of Fame? And when I've had a friend of the show, Dr. David Fletcher, who wrote the Chili Dog MVP book about the impact that Dick Allen had on revitalizing a franchise. Mooney could be that guy. He's in his prime. Talk about trading him is just straight up fucking loser mindset, and I fucking hate it, and it has to stop. And it has to stop with the idea of keeping him in this uniform for an extended period of time while he is in his prime destroying baseballs. So, Uncle Justin, again, I am pleading to you directly because I know you're listening. Whatever it is you have to do, tell Satan you want to spend your money to allow Mooney to stay in a White Sox uniform.
That's a letter from NWI Steve straight to the front office right there. Actually, the owner's box. I don't disagree with it. I don't disagree with it at all, because where else are you going to find another one of these? They're pretty hard to come by. You know, you talk about something that falls in your lap, and they say, you know, don't look a gift horse in the mouth. This would be one of those times. I don't see this storyline going away until ink dries on a contract. That's why I think, you know, if this it continues to go this way, and we're sitting there near, you know, June, July, even past the trade deadline in August, you got to start thinking about it. You got to start thinking about the extension. I can see a world where the White Sox are operating underneath the idea that the power could dry up. We haven't seen the huge dry spell. What's going to happen there? Well, how's the CBA going to go?
The CBA has nothing to do with this, because again, as we've talked about, they have like $10 million committed.
Yeah, there's money available.
Like
there should be. I should rephrase it. There should be.
There is no financial structure that can possibly be implemented with a new CBA unless they're paying him $150 million a year. That is the only scenario. Otherwise, there is no tangible way that any structure that gets implemented following the lockout could possibly be.
I hate to even ask this question. What do you think a deal looks like if he does hit 40 to 45 homers this year?
I think it looks like people trying to burn the ballpark down. That's what I think it looks like. As far as whatever, I'm not even going to speculate on that, because I refuse to. I refuse.
He could play himself into a very uncomfortable position for what current ownership wants to pay.
That's, you know what?
That's a good. That should be a.
I think that's a good problem to have when a guy performs so well that, oh my God, we have to fucking pay him a shit ton of money. Holy fuck. Oh my God, he hit 45 home runs, you know, and he's in his prime. Oh God, now we have to pay him to continue to be good and hit a lot of home runs for us. Fuck, how awful.
Wow. That sucks. Man, I can't believe that we have to dissect these rumors and storylines. It's a White Sox off day for you, Steve. I don't have much more on this one. It's just kind of getting ridiculous being a White Sox fan and having to plow through these things. You know, hey, glad we've got him on the cheap right now, but it certainly seems like he's going to earn himself a payday, and I hope it's here. I hope he becomes the highest paid White Sox player of all time. Yes. And the home runs continue to be hit, and the fireworks continue to go off, and I love fireworks.
And it would certainly be great if the stain of an Italian being the highest paid player in franchise history was removed. I mean, I think that would go a long way towards getting this franchise back on track.
Well, then there you go with your comments again. One last little bit of White Sox news. Barrera hits the IL, and Jared Kelenic got the call up. Steve, you shared a little tidbit with me in the pre-show on this one. It's kind of an interesting White Sox note, and we'll leave it at this one. So I'll let you share this factoid with everybody before we get on out of here.
So, as you might expect, I get a lot of White Sox related texts from people that I know. Anytime anything happens White Sox related, I just get people coming out of the woodwork, and
I'm shocked to hear this.
Yeah.
People know that you're a White Sox fan?
Yeah, big news if true. So my buddy Scotty, who might be listening tonight, if you are Scotty, I'm gonna give you a little plug here. He sent me something that he came across on Reddit that with Jared Kelenic getting called up and getting in the game yesterday, the White Sox have already used 41 players through the month of April. That is the most in the history of baseball in terms of number of players used through the month of April.
That's fantastic White Sox stuff. Like that's trivia worthy right there. That's Tuesday night trivia at the local White Sox dive bar, Steven. I had posed you a question in reply to this, and I said we've already used 41 players. It's only April. Do you have the White Sox hitting over 70 players this season? Now, I might want to reduce that number to 60, but I could see a world where bullpen shuffling, some trade deadline stuff, some call-ups happen, where you can get maybe close to 65. We'll set the over-under there right in the middle. 65 players. That's only what? 24 more guys that have to hit this roster and appear in a ball game. I can see 24 other guys appearing in a ball game for the Chicago White Sox this season. Steven, what's your thoughts on this?
I think they'll get to 69 players. #dice.
There you go. Or we could go with the old 6'7". The kids love that one these days. Yeah, there it is. Steven dropping a 6'7".
I have nephews that are in their youth. Okay.
Yeah, that's why you stick around here to the 58th minute of the show, is to see Steve hit the 6'7". Steve, it's been fun. We've discussed a lot of White Sox topics. We talked about how sweet it is to sweep at home. Home sweep home, as we titled this episode. It's fantastic. I love White Sox winners, and I know you do as well, and so do all the listeners here. The second show in a week. Is it fair to say we're finding our groove a little bit here, Steve?
Let me pose this question to you, Anthony. Would you go as far as to say we're #back?
I think we're #back, and I'm happy to say that we're #back talking White Sox baseball. Steve, it's been
we might need to reach out to multiple sources.
We might. That's fair. We might need more sauces on this, but it's been great. I love the cadence to pick up the winning. The winning baseball helps. It really does. It helps the mental health. We'll put it that way. Steve, that's about all the time we have for today. Thank you to everybody who tuned in to this episode of Sox on Tap, Season 8, Episode 6, Home Sweep Home. You can follow the show at Sox on Tap on X. You can follow me at Tony on Tap. You can't follow Steve because he's not on X. Make sure you go to ontapsportsnet.com for all of your Chicago sports literature and podcasting needs. We've got everything Chicago related and more covered over there, and some expanded baseball coverage. You can follow baseball_on tap for more league-wide coverage that we've been kicking off this season. Steven, that's about it. White Sox forever.
White Sox for life.